Namaste and in Lak'ech, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and this week's guest is JenLyn. She's an iconoclastic visionary that will absolutely blow your mind in the conversation we're about to have. I'll guarantee it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. So, JenLyn, it's so great to have you here. We've had some time on the Friendship Bench, which is sponsored by Biz Catalyst 360. And if you guys in the audience haven't experienced a bench, I'd advise you to check it out. Just Google it, and the Friendship Bench and Biz Catalyst 360, and you'll find it. So, what we talk about here is the bridge between inner and outer realities. Some of them are so bizarre, so weird, it seems insane to many because it's so unreal and they have no direct experience of it. So what we seek to do is share that conversation in an apocalyptic chat to uncover the knowledge that each of those have been able to ascertain and share, no matter how it may sound. Because trust me, we're not insane, we're not weird, we're just connected. So thank you for tuning in. And JenLyn, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think it's just amazing to be here and to have real conversations about leading, really, by sharing, people understanding what it is that they're experiencing. So what it is that you're experiencing out there, right? That you don't know who to talk to about, right? But you know it's happening for you. And so I think that's just a really amazing part of being connected and being able to understand is being able to share and guide others so that they know that they're okay, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the thing that I have found, and I've known this since childhood. It's what we seek is to love and be loved, and everything else piles up on top of that prohibits it.
Yeah.
By what we assume to be true based on what we're told and our inability to have the critical thinking that's deep enough to question it and seek things on our own.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So now here we are being able to share personal journeys, understanding, reflections that allow others to hear another's experience and maybe relate to it in some way that helps them take that next step or to feel more confident or even to understand, yes, it's okay to love and be loved. And it's a challenge in today's world to be in that place. We seek to change that.
Yeah.
So in this change, most often we have initial experiences as children that we don't necessarily become aware of how connected they are until later in our adulthood when we begin questioning life, right? And why we're here, what our purpose is, what our mission might be, and how to ascertain what that is and fulfill it, right, on a personal level. So how did that begin for you?
When I was, when I was about 18 months old, I actually had my first out of body experience, which I remember we were sitting in a room and there was family. I think maybe it was Thanksgiving or Christmas or,
Mhm.
something like that. And I just, I remember kind of floating up out of my body. I remember feeling myself moving through my body and then being above everyone. And not just seeing their body, but seeing a different kind of body,
Sure.
which obviously I did understand. Obviously, I couldn't have articulated until
Oh,
years
yeah. And,
later,
and
right?
to, for most people, now here's one of those instances where that sounds almost incredulous, right? Because we don't
Yes.
think we're able to do this at 18 months old. And yet, with that kind of depth of experience, it's indelible. in our
Yes.
consciousness. And it gives us that moment of connection that is so, let's say, resonant
Yeah.
that it locks in an experience, what Massey calls them significant emotional events, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got that benchmark that then helps you to
Mm.
develop the future.
Yeah.
So please continue.
I remember before that, even probably younger, I think probably about 6 or 9 months old, I have a twin brother. And I remember being in my crib, and I remember that I was working through emotions. I was crying because I knew in that moment there was this realization that was coming to me that something could happen on this plane in these bodies that we were in, that he could die and we could be separated. And I was so overwhelmed by that that I remember just laying there and crying. So from that point forward, like grief, understanding that grief and separation and fear were things that not only through the moment could you work through, but preemptively per se. I have
Sure.
mourned, right? I've mourned for the earth. I've mourned for people. I've slowly over time, and then I mourn very, very deeply when
Mhm.
someone crosses. And to me, what I see is at crossing over is that we are returning that love on an energetic level. It is energy. I can see it moving forward from people, to sometimes create like this really big, large orb that will then,
Mhm.
dissipate. But we're returning that because
Yeah,
that,
let's look at that for just a second, okay? Because
okay.
your description of something that you see,
Mhm.
we see less than 1% of the visible light spectrum, or of the electromagnetic spectrum, I'll put it that way,
Yeah.
as what we think is visible light. Now, that's with the limited sensory capacity that we've had. We don't understand that our bodies, our eyes, they're built.
Yeah.
They're a transceiver. They're a
Yes.
perceptive device that we then integrate the energy, the vibrations, and we know now quantum physics says we're all energy. So how do we integrate that? How do we access it? How do we become aware of what else is there? Those who do, or whether they're set up from, it depends on the school of thought on that, whether it's, the advantage of many lifetimes reaching this state to where now you're self-aware and you're more inquisitive about it, whether you know that or not, it's happening in that moment. And so the higher sensitivity levels that people like you, myself, and others similar to us have, it is, and we never know when it's going to be, right? There's this second sight, there's this additional view that we have of reality that fades in and out depending on the integrity of the moment and the need.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So, and it's not a personal aggrandizement kind of thing. It's just something that we're called as servants to be present, and so we are,
Yeah. Yeah.
no matter how it may seem.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that, and I hope that that makes sense to the audience in that there is this possibility of sight and sound and sensitivity,
Yeah.
empathy that we have that is growing in its nature, especially since COVID. It gave us
Yeah.
the opportunity to sit, self-obsess on hygiene,
Yeah.
which is not only outer, that's inner too.
Inner. Yes.
So it folds inward and we start questioning and looking at self-examination and who we are, why we're here, what what our passions, purpose, and beliefs are.
Yeah. Yes. Um, yeah.
So
Um,
as you were growing, you had this vision and saw you sensed the energy coming and
mm,
seeing the orbs and things like
yes.
that.
I've seen myself, what I know as myself. And I knew I was so when I was 2, I saw this woman, and she was not in a human body form, and she was very iridescent. She had pink hair. She excuse me. She was just emanating this pink light. She was just pink. And my brother and I and my mom were all in the room, all in the same bed. And so at first I was a little frightened. Then I was not frightened. I was just very curious, very fascinated. And she was speaking to me telepathically. She wasn't
Mhm.
really speaking words. And I was waking up my brother, and I'm like, Bubby, don't you see her? She's so beautiful. Like, don't you see her? And he's like, leave me alone, sissy, like he didn't see anything. Then I felt fear. Then I felt a little bit of fear. Like, oh, what do
You've
you
been
mean?
rejected.
Yes. And what do you mean you don't see? And then I woke up my mom, and then she didn't either. And so then I was very confused. And so that did affect, and her presence.
Hmm.
You're right, it started affecting her presence. And so then I know that I just kind of pushed that to the side because I didn't want her to leave. And she
And
began,
at the same time, you were trying to fit in.
yeah, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
tough to do, right?
Yeah.
That's where that bridge, that's where, for me, when I've
Mhm.
attempted to do this, man, pain and grief.
Yeah. Um, are something that I think we feel, and experience every day. uh,
Hmm.
and but I did connect with her even physically. And when I did, uh, she took me by the hand, and when we connected hands, I understood that she was me. And here I am, right?
Sure. Sure. Now,
So
this is something, okay, when you said that, and this is really, thank you for sharing this because it gives me a chance to interject some of the things that I know about from experience and that have been authored by others and validated.
yeah.
First, that we have multiple bodies on at least 9 planes of consciousness based on my direct experience of a technique that was developed in the 1950s. There's 2 gentlemen, Vernon Neppy and Edward Close, that wrote a theory of everything quantum physics paper and published it in 2010. And they ascertained and posit that consciousness, space, and time are tethered across 9 dimensions.
Mhm.
So here's a correlation, right?
Yeah.
My experience was in 89. The technique was developed in the 50s. So 60 years later, there's science to back it up,
Yeah.
what I got from that. So that's one aspect of it. On another side of things, there's a gentleman named Wilbert Smith, who was the project magnet director, which is Canada's UFO program that
Okay.
was similar to the US's Project Blue
Mhm.
Book,
No.
right? And so he ran this program. Scientist, had contact, had conversations, wrote memoirs. They got published 2 years after he died. So his reflection of the conversations in one instance was they said their preferred method of communication is telepathy.
Yeah.
Words get in the way
Hmm.
because of the various ways that the words are understood
Yeah.
and the trigger points that they may carry.
Yeah.
So this, in the telepathic sense, it's energy. It's that transference of a multidimensional, um, even multimedia expression
Yeah.
that our minds and brains are able to discern and integrate even beyond the level of consciousness that we may have. Like Carl Jung says, it's about making the unconscious conscious. Well, the
Right.
unconscious is still operational. We just don't understand what all it does yet.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, oh my gosh. I love, of course, the subconscious and the conscious. And I grew up in libraries. We I always was at the library. We would ride our bikes like 8 miles to the library, and
Mm,
just was kind of always there. I was born and raised in Texas, but I did thankfully very much so have an 8 year, 9 year period of time from 8 years old to 18 where I was back and forth in the Pacific Northwest in
mm.
Oregon. And that changed my life. I wouldn't be who I was had that experience not happened. Being able to be in nature, of course, a lot. We camped a lot, we traveled a lot. And when I was about 11 or 12, we went, my Earth Mother is my stepmom, and she's my Earth Mother. She's my guide
Mhm.
here in Earth and the flesh. And my dad were both, Reiki masters and energy masters. And we would go to Arizona, and I have spent time on the Hopi Indian reservation. And
Cool.
when I was about 11 or, well, actually, I think I was probably more like 9 or 10. We did go on a trip there and we were there, and um I did get to take part of a ceremony with a medicine wheel act of creating it, and then um a journey, right? With the drums playing, people playing drums, dancing, singing, and I met my very first, well, probably like my first or second animal guide, which
Mhm.
was a dolphin at the time. But also the Indian chief, did proclaim me and say, that I was a star seed, and also, an ordainment, if you will, as a shaman, a shaw woman myself, and gave me a name that is not really speakable. It's
Wait, if you try and speak in Hopi, yeah, we wouldn't understand it anyway.
yeah, it's
It's fascinating that that you'd been on the reservation, and I'm assuming that you visited Prophecy Rock, and
yes.
we see photos of that. I was associated with the tribe for a number of years through dating the one of the past president's daughters,
Okay.
and I didn't know that she was at the time. My
Wow.
oldest daughter and her daughter met each other in high school, and
Okay.
we lived close to each other, and so they conspired and wanted to get us together. So that happened for a little while. What
Yeah.
fascinated me though is their history of star family
Hmm.
understanding. And there's an area there that you may or may not have been aware of. It's called the landing place. And it is a rock formation that has a circular area within the rock formation that has an opening to the east.
Hmm.
This supposedly is where the seven ships carrying the seven sisters from the Pleiades landed and
Yeah.
gave them tobacco and corn
Yeah.
as part of their physical and spiritual
Yes.
worshiping practices. Uh,
Um,
it's an amazing place, and thousands of petroglyphs
yes.
on the face outside of or surrounding it. And not too many even know it's there. We
Yeah.
were gifted to be able to see
It
that.
was. Um, I do remember going to the rocks, but I don't remember physically going to where you're speaking of, but I have been there in my,
Mhm.
dreams or in my astral travels.
What I found interesting was that next to Prophecy Rock,
Yeah.
less than 100 feet away, was a dried up spring
Mm,
that had once nurtured watered the fields
yeah.
all around there.
Right.
And the theory is that because of the mining north of there, that the water table had dropped, and
Right. Yeah.
so it was no longer functional.
Yeah. Um, the East. is I'm like a gatekeeper of the East um, through Lady Hawk, which I actually have my hawk feather uh,
Hmm.
right here. And so that's like my entrance is the East. And yeah. So which if you've
So
never,
with that,
yeah.
go ahead if you ever.
I was just, if you've never heard of a medicine wheel or an entrance into a medicine wheel is a vortex. It's a vortex that's created of unity with yourself, with the earth, with the rocks, with the stones, the elements, the elementals that you gather specifically for and the medicine wheel that you are preparing. And the medicine wheel does become a vortex. It is a place where you can commune and call in with you and your ancestors, the star beings, the animals, the earth, and come into a place
Mhm.
of holding space and being able to
Setting your intention to do so, right?
setting your
This is what
intention.
makes it all work, is this intention, this willingness, this submission, if you will, to serving a greater cause and making yourself available to that for your own supplication, for lack of a better, and for the supplication of others.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And yeah, so I have been doing that for most of my life since I was like 9. Doing that, creating space in that way, doing and creating and holding different rituals and ceremonies. And I'm also ordained, and also an ordained minister. So I've studied a lot and worked a
That wouldn't
lot.
be Universal Life Church by chance, would it?
Yeah, of course.
So am I.
Of course. And so I
Like,
love
duh.
that. Yeah, I love that. And man, I in the last 5 years, 6 years, it was before, it's probably so 2018, so I guess it's a little bit longer than that, maybe. Before COVID, I had started being let's see, we were talking about having the ability, right, to be able to see maybe extra sensory, extra
Right.
colors, hear things, know things, understand things, like so. An interesting story with that, when I was a child, I would get, sent out to mow grass, and I couldn't. I would be overwhelmed and I would be in
Oh, you're
tears.
gonna hurt the grass.
I'm
No.
hurting. Yes,
Right.
I'm hurting the grass, and the grass is hurting. And my dad would be like, stop stalling and just get out there and do it, and so eventually I would.
Now
Uh
that illustrates something very deep,
mm,
right? We don't consider the consciousness, the feelings, the energy of nature, and we've not respected it. Now, that doesn't mean that we necessarily did it on purpose, because the assumption is, oh, Mother is going to take care of herself no matter what we do,
right.
and because she can do that.
Yes.
Well, yes, to a certain extent. However, when you continue the abuse and for
Because
personal gain,
yes.
then that breaks that chain.
Yeah. Yes. And it does, and we're here to hold that space, and we're also here to assist her. We're here to help her hold the space to have her ceremony of light, right? To dance with the cosmos, and because we are not separate from her, and from there is no
We're her
separation.
children. I mean, you
Right.
consider
Yes.
the earth is what, stardust, right? It's come together. We feed off her. Everything that comes from the earth, whether it's animal,
Yeah.
mineral, plant,
Yeah.
right? So that's who we are. We
Yeah.
just have a consciousness that goes into it that
Yeah.
can make choices to how to play.
Yes. Uh, yes, we're playing, and we are playing, and she is playing through us. And I
That's the
learned,
intention anyway, because of our fears and our
yeah,
resentments and the trauma and all that kind of stuff. We've kind of pulled back from that. And now with COVID, maybe we have the opportunity to readdress that and learn
yes,
how to come back together in unity because we are one people, one planet. This is one time we can do it.
yeah. Yes, and I talk about it as a remembrance. It's a remembrance of these things because we do know it's inside of us, it's deep
Hmm.
inside of us, it's buried within us. Sometimes it's buried deep, but we can access it. Years later, I found out that grass, that smell. Oh, I love that smell.
Hmm.
A fresh cut grass.
Oh
That
yeah.
smell is a chemical that's being released from the grass itself that is warning the rest of the grass. It is a cry out, right? That it is in danger and that there are
That's an
things,
interesting perspective, right?
uh, yeah. And that's exactly what I was picking up on and what I was feeling,
And in the grass world, that's probably true.
It is,
We
yes.
don't have a clue as to what that is yet.
No. Um, no, but we do know that it's like this chemical that's being released. And so for me, I'm like deducting that is exactly what it was that I felt and what I was experiencing. And I've always known that mushrooms sang. I've always known that the trees are
The
can.
mycelium network.
Yes, and below the surface, right? As above, so below, is that, that there is this below and it is connected and there's no separation. And here on this surface level in this 3D realm, there's matter, right?
Right.
And
And,
in
and and there's a lot of matter.
there's
We
a
have
lot of,
so many biases and prejudices about shit that matters,
yeah,
we think,
yeah, yeah.
right? And really none of it matters because all it does is create more separation.
Yes. I love to tell people that maybe, well, in 2020 with COVID, many people had an awakening and they have this remembrance that's happening. And there are those of us that, like
Well, we're here
yourself,
because of the
right?
breadcrumbs
We are.
of that.
Yes.
His catalyst started as a result of that. The friendship bench in specific started because of that to effectively bring people together to talk about coming out of the trauma and reimagining the world
Yeah.
in a better place.
Yes. Um, and I love, and so before that even happened, I knew that something was coming. I'd had a
Mhm.
vision. I didn't know that it was going to be an illness, and actually, I had right before COVID actually got announced, about a month before I got COVID. I had COVID. I was
Mm.
so sick. And I had been rushed to the emergency room. And everything about what they did is why I know that it was COVID. And they told me that it was something, but they couldn't tell me, like exactly what it was.
I
And
still don't think they know. There were two versions of it, from what I understand. There was a virus that was released from Wuhan, and it had a different effect on the lungs. It would make them fibrous instead
yes,
of
like
full of
glass.
water.
Yes.
And so, but the majority of what was happening was simply advanced symptoms of the flu that
Mm,
which brought pneumonia and caused, people needing to be on respirators. So there were those two
yes.
factors that got spun, and then, oh my gosh, everybody go home, close your doors, put masks on, don't do anything.
Which I'd actually been wearing masks already for 2 years because I myself have autoimmunes. Uh,
Sure.
I have like 8 of them, and
Which can be really debilitating and
it
limit your exposure to the world because of it. And,
absolutely does.
and those of us that are free of that haven't a clue as to what it's like to, be sensitive to that. And not necessarily that you don't want to be, right? These are just things that, now here's the interesting things. I didn't want to go too far with that. The advantages of working through those things, because we don't grow without challenge. We each have a different challenge that our skill set is designed to meet that we don't explore.
Right.
So you explored it and beginning that. So please continue.
So curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Curiosity and compassion are the two keys that will unlock all the worlds within you. And part of being able to do that for me was going through the experience of having autoimmunes and having to stop and slow down and to take the time to really sit and then just dive deep down within myself. And as I accepted different things like, oh, I can't, I lost my job that I worked so hard for. I was the first
Right.
person.
Well, that's one of the things too. It's like, you still have to be in this world.
You're
There's
still
some
in this
kind of
world.
economic exchange that needs to
Yeah,
take place in order to live.
absolutely. Um, and so about 2016, I spent 6 months downloading and understanding and learning what are 30 different sets of skills that those that were being awakened would have, that are needed right now, today, through the next, to the next resetting, or remembrance in that way.
Mhm.
So it all has to do around leadership. And
That seems to be the general consensus.
yes. So it was like, even some people might be aware, right, of things that like clairs, we would call them
The
clairs. And
Clarels. I refer to them as the Clarels.
okay. So
Only your hairdresser knows for sure.
for
But
sure. I love that one. Um, 30 of them and 30 different sets. And within each set is these, different inclinations or
sure.
natural
What
uh,
we're talking about for those of you in the audience
yes.
who may
That
understand
don't
what's going on here. So the Clarels are various senses. There are 8 or 9 of them that are pretty standard before the advancement, and they're all prefaced by clair. So you have clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, uh, those types of things, which are additional levels of sensitivity that one may or may not have. We all have them, but we just don't develop them.
yeah.
Some do. And
Yes.
so that can be really overwhelming, especially when it's not understood and you're trying to figure out how to navigate life and there's nobody there to help.
Yeah. Yes. And the clear means clear, right? So
Hmm.
you may not understand it, but it means that that the sense itself is clear. You have clear hearing or clear sight, and it's
Right.
beyond. Um,
Then you got to learn how to interpret.
and then yes, yes. So it's all just it is a lifetime, lifetimes within a lifetime of
Right.
diving deep with that curiosity and uncovering, experimenting, and figuring out, when I do this or when this happens, it seems to tie into this thing, right? And so then you play around and, can I use this thing to make it happen? Well,
Sure.
yeah, I can. Cool, right? And so that's
Right.
how you kind of unfold
Yeah.
these.
So it seems like there's a lot of associations through tangentialism.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Because we go off on those spins, tangents being where a line intersects a circle in
yeah,
one point, for those of you that geometry. And this allows you, with that curiosity, right? You spin off, you acquire the knowledge, you have an apocalyptic moment, then you come back to the circle with that new information, and it essentially, instead of a circle, it becomes a spiral because you're moving upward in your understanding of self, others, the world, the cosmos, the framework of holistic education,
Yeah. Yes.
mind, body, spirit, planet, cosmos.
Mhm. And for me, that really, in this 3D matter has looked like really jumping into quantum physics and quantum entanglement and neuroscience and really understanding our electromagnetic body.
Mhm.
Even within the awakening itself, we talk a lot about our spiritual body and our physical body and our mental body, our emotional body, but we don't understand or talk about the electromagnetic body
Right.
that we have. And so being able to dive in deep, to with all of those things is kind of where.
Otherwise known as the aura.
Yes.
And did you know, and you probably do, I'd like to share this. So in the present moment, there's three different places that we are. Lao Tzu even addresses this as, if you're in the past, you're in regret. If you're in the future, you're in worry. If you're present, neither of those matter. In the present, so that the auric field is measurable. You can do it as simply with a set of dowsing rods. And in order to do that, this is what was shared with me. In the past and future, your aura, because you're stuck in those places, your aura is about 6 feet, has a 6 foot radius. So it's about 12 foot in diameter, 10 to 12 feet. In the present, that's exponentiated to a minimum of 6 or 7 times that size. I experienced that through a experiment that there's a woman who understood this that used the dowsing rods to demonstrate to me how it worked.
Love it.
And we were in a room, 40-foot square room. She was in one corner, I was in the other corner, both past and present, or past and future. The rods open about 6 feet away from me. We marked the spot. This was all with my eyes closed in doing this. And then she stepped back into the corner in the present. She grabbed a rock out of the windowsill and put it in my hand and said, "Here, focus on this for the present." Barely got 2 steps in from the other side of the room. So it went from 6 foot to over 50 feet
Yeah.
in the present moment. Now, how does that correlate? Well, imagine what you would be able to do in that kind of awareness and mindfulness to those around you, because we are all energy and we are all sensitive to it, whether we, acknowledge that or not. It affects us subtly because we're all subtle energy bodies.
Um, I love to do this as a simple little practice.
Yeah.
You, of course, you use your breath, right? Your breath
Mhm.
is your anchor. It's to anchor you in. Like I want to share because I think it's really important when we are doing or entering a meditative state or an altered state. I want you to realize that it's not to leave your body, it is to anchor in your body. This body is the vehicle, okay?
Yes.
It is the vehicle, and it's so important.
It's how we are cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just
Yes,
unaware.
yes.
You're offering some things about how to become more aware.
Yes, absolutely. So as you become more aware, right, and fill into your heart chakra, especially it's the bridge, right?
Hmm.
Um, connect to a vision, a feeling, right? It's all about the feeling to be in the present moment of gratitude or
Oh.
love, awe, curiosity, joy, courage, acceptance, right?
Hmm.
And then practice with yourself as you're breathing, practice feeling that. And that's that field, right, that you were talking about and expanding that. And then,
And do it with yourself
yes,
first,
do it with
right? Because
yourself.
if you can't do it with you,
No,
the rest are like unavailable.
yes. And when you do it with you, you're
You go
like,
through a lot of doo-doo.
you do go through a lot of doo-doo. And you go through a lot of things. You really
Yep.
do. You uncover a lot within yourself. Um, And you also learn how to be able to tap into that feeling, that frequency. And then I love to do this. When you go out in public, right? Most of you probably are like, oh, I hate going out in public. And it's because you're feeling all that energy, right? You're like, ooh, that's nasty. I don't like it. It's stressful. And that jerk cut me off in traffic, right? All of those things. But if we can, every time that happens, take a breath and anchor ourselves back into that moment, we change the ripple effect that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to say to go to a restaurant because it's a little bit of a closed area and go in with that intention that you are going to stay in that place as much as possible. And just every time you inhale and exhale, just see that, right? Like you're sending it out into the room. You're being open, you are being curious, and see how it changes your experience, not only for you, but you'll see and begin to see because you're looking, because you want to see. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to have the veil
Well, there's a distinction. Let me offer this.
Yes.
You're not trying to see,
No, no.
right? It's a seeing from awareness and observation that emerges.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank
You're
you for
welcome.
clarification. Um, But what you will see with the people that are in front of you is you will see that change. You will
Mm-hmm.
feel it and you will see it. You will begin to see people start smiling. Maybe the guy at the end of the, bar when you very first walked in, maybe you kind of picked up that he was pretty lonely. Maybe now there's conversation happening between him and someone else, right? There's this connection that's
Oh, but
happening.
I can't affect things like that. I'm not that powerful. What do you mean?
Yes, you are powerful beyond measure.
Yeah, I've experienced that, so I know the truth of it.
Yeah.
You can't
Uh,
deny your direct experience. That's the wonderful thing about this,
yeah.
as bizarre as it may be,
Yes.
right? You cannot deny it happening, just like the light right now is a
Yeah.
significant indicator that went, oh,
It
where did
really,
you go?
where did you go? I disappeared.
Yeah. So with that, now, and I love your explanations because it's very pertinent to have these types of experiences, be open to them, not be afraid of them, because there is nothing in them to fear except learning more about yourself. And if that's something that you're really afraid of, then maybe your life isn't all that great.
Yeah.
And you're in turmoil or you feel like it's in chaos and you can't find your way out and you're looking for help but don't know how to ask for it. So
Absolutely.
when you were going through this, what were the kinds of things that happened, that questions you had, answers, like Rilke says, Rainer Maria Rilke is a philosopher, poet, 20th century, presented that ask the question, let life answer it. Because if you got the question, you don't have the intelligence to answer it, or you wouldn't be asking it. Life
Right.
will give you the answer. That answer may come through another person, a book, a place, a thing, a movie, or
Yeah.
everything,
Yes.
all inclusive. You
Yep.
have an all-inclusive travel package for one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I always get the all-inclusive package, so but you do realize that, and there's the adage of be careful what you ask for, quote unquote. It's not to be careful about what it is that you ask for, in the sense that you're going to,
Understanding that you get it.
yes, it's just understanding that you will get it. And the clearer you are, right? So we have things that happen in life, that are presenting an opportunity for us to choose,
Hmm.
to be curious, to be open, to peel back the layers.
I
Because
feel a Yoda moment.
yeah,
Do or do not. right? Because the mind doesn't, your subject, the topic of your thought is what the mind pays attention to,
Yes.
not whether you want it or don't want it. So if you don't want something and that's what your focus is on, guess what's going to happen?
That.
It's going to happen,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
So
what you're
be
being
more
clear.
conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
being
The
clear on,
clair part of it.
yes, is exactly what, when it's never a punishment. You're never really
But it
being,
is full of puns.
it is full of puns. And it doesn't mean that it's not coming with pain, with confusion, with anger, with all of those things, along with joy and happiness
And
and
that's the natural part of
it's
it
the
because
natural
we
part.
are all of those. To
Yes.
embrace that in yourself, of yourself, by yourself, and for yourself. Let's see if I can pull out some more prepositions. This allows you to step more fully into who you are.
Yeah. And you begin to understand that you begin to understand how to get clear. You do begin to understand how to really set that intention and then keep your attention on your intention.
Right.
Beautiful friends, April Wyatt says that, because it's so true. It is what you're keeping your attention on. And so to learn and play, right? Play around with what I have changed my life so many times. I do it every single day purposely
Oh,
now.
every time I've seen you,
Right.
you look
Yeah.
different, right? So,
Yes.
so a a book by its cover, it no longer, right? You have to spend time with the book to
Yes.
really understand and learn those places, discover
Yeah.
those places of connectivity rather than that which separates.
Yes. And we do that by spending time with ourselves. We do it through the mindful practices that we all hear so much about, but it's true. It's
Mhm.
through journaling, it's through meditation, it's through clearing our body somatically,
Sure.
it's through understanding our electromagnetic body, it is through
And
spending
getting
time.
through the outer appearances of
Yes,
others, right? I
absolutely.
mean, you know this. I know you do because I love to dress flamboyantly. I've got a marbleized tuxedo that acts as a filter, right?
Yes,
So these, it's like, oh, you see, wow, they look weird. They're different, right? Oh, you can't be the same as me. You look so different. Well, no, that's not the case. The difference is what you're seeing and you're choosing to remain biased about.
yes,
So
absolutely.
look at that in retrospect before you make a judgment,
Right.
because it's all about perspective, and our perception is driven by our perspective.
Absolutely. I think the most and I have a hard time articulating a word for the experience because
Give it
it's
a try.
it's deeper than deep, it's wider than wide, and it is this understanding that there really is no separation. There's this understanding that not that
Intimacy.
yes, and that you're capable of anything and everything that any other human you see has done. Listen, so have you. You've done it yeah, on a surface level, you've done it simply because they have, and there's no separation. On
Hmm.
a deeper level, you understand that you've done it because you've done it. You understand that right, that you absolutely have the capability. You've thought it, you've done it, you've dreamt it, you've done it. You've
You
actually
can
done
visualize it. Who was Napoleon Hill,
it. Right. So,
conceive and believe, and achieve.
yeah. And when you do that, your mind, right? Your mind is going to process, it's going to analyze, it's going to judge. That's
Sure.
what it does. And
Yeah.
but you can allow it to do that. The thing is when you can call yourself and say, call yourself a rapist, a murderer, like the worst of the worst. When you can say that, when you spend time with that, when you forgive, when you accept, when you move through and you transmute and you alchemize that, you no longer your heart, right? Your heart, your energy no longer shuts off, even when you're in the presence of somebody that happens to be living that truth right now, because you have accepted that. And you've worked through, right, all of that process. And that's it. That's how you get to that place of being able to really understand and really live on this plane
Right.
without judging another, being able to, at least that's how it's worked for me, and being able to hold space, be able to be with any, be with people in their darkness, quote unquote. I call it denseness, right? It's not a
Mhm.
matter of positive or negative in the way that most people think. It's a negative and a
Constricted
positive
thought.
polarization. Yes.
It's constricted thought. And because of it, constricted energy results, right? Because
Yes.
you've reduced yourself. Now, physiologically, what I believe we go through, there's an ancient indigenous philosophy called the three brains,
Yes.
and they're the gut, the heart, and the head.
Yep.
Energetically, physiologically, now we are set up for this, and we understand medically there's more neurosensors in the gut than there are in the brain. Well, why is that? Intuition, gut feeling. Where did those sayings come from and why? Right? So now we know through the quantum studies that energy is connected. We sense the energy first, we interpret it. We have the kind of the Taoist aspect going on the heart level, whether it's desirable or undesirable. And then based on that, then we can feed it to the head, the computer that then analyzes, makes right or better choices as a result, because the information is clearer.
Yes. And it's not moving, when we do mindfulness practices, and it's going through a cleaner channel, right? So it's not catching up all of the different muck, and we feel that, right? Like most of you probably are really common word right now, right, is a trigger. Oh, I've been triggered, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's, yeah, you have. It's like a I was a paramedic firefighter for 15 years, so I compare it to kind of like an electrical jolt, like
Sure.
it is a jolt, to let you know that, hey, there's something here, and it's really this beautiful opportunity to get curious and be like, okay, well,
What's that? What's
what
that?
was that?
You've had this is yourself giving you a prompt to pause and look
Yes. Yeah.
with curiosity.
Curiosity.
Now so this sounds like, oh, you mean I'm going to be looking for moments and now I'm distracted with everything you're doing. No, it's part of everything you're doing. There will be those moments. It's non-linear.
Yes. Yeah.
We try to make life linear. It ain't.
No. It's outside of causality, and like you said, and it becomes this spiral, like you
Yeah,
said, which is that vortex also that I mentioned.
sure. Well, breath, heartbeat. Every heartbeat, it's
Yeah.
like this spiral that expands and contracts and
Yes.
expands and contracts. Breath does the same thing. It brings, out and in. This is just, it's the same as the pulse of the universe. We're just
Yeah.
reflections of it, where the universe has figured out how to experience itself.
Yeah. Um, ooh, experiencing yourself, right? Uh,
Mm,
that's at the heart of who I am now today, is that expression and that experience of self, every day, which is why you will very probably never see me looking the same twice.
Well,
Uh,
Harv Eker says, I heard him years ago and met the guy, who does this millionaire mindset thing. But one thing that he said stuck with me, and this is like 30 years ago. What you do anywhere, you do everywhere.
yes,
You may not
absolutely.
realize it, but these triggers allow you to become aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is a message, and talking about, the mind, the heart, and the gut being, the three different brains.
Different kind of trinity, right?
Yeah, it is. And we talk about, I wanted to share, to me, when we talk about as above and so below, right? We are talking, there's different realms of what that means. But one of the things that it means is as above, like what's in here, what you're thinking about, what you're believing, what you're paying attention to, the subconscious belief systems that are running through, eh, affect below, right? They
Sure.
affect your heart and they affect your gut. And
Creates your
then it
reality,
does
in
the
other
vice versa,
words.
but it absolutely creates your reality. And as
Well, wait a
within,
minute. Wait a minute. We're not creators. Well, 15,000 years ago, there was a group of poems called the Vedas.
yes,
And essentially, it gave us the philosophy that we're just now finding out it's actually true. We're all divine threads connected to source, capable of God consciousness.
yeah,
And this is what we're talking about.
it is.
It's
And
not blasphemous. This is actually the opposite. This is what the guys actually meant that we're trying to teach this stuff. And we're finally getting it because science has given us that bridge.
right now, we in this matter can see it, hear it, feel it, touch it, taste it, right? We've brought it into matter, so it makes it much easier to lean into and to understand. And some throughout time have done it on faith, by curiosity, by that knowing and having
And the trusting in the experience that
trusting.
every
Yes,
incremental step, it gives you the ability to take one more.
yes. um and when we do that, when we can have that trust and lean in, right, that's that leaning in.
Mhm.
And
Especially into the uncomfortable spots.
the uncomfortable spots is where the treasures are. It's where your gifts are. It's where those little pieces and parts, right? So like I like to talk about it as, sometimes it's not safe. Sometimes you had this muchness, is what I love to call it. You have this
Hmm.
muchness, and when you're showing it or expressing it, it maybe you get rejected. Maybe you experience getting abandoned, right? We experience these things.
Because
And
it's different. It's
yes,
and that's usually the sole reason. It's
yes,
different. It's outside the wheelhouse, the bailiwick, the understanding, the awareness of the other individual because they've had no direct experience of it
right.
from which to garner any kind of understanding, let alone um, grokking.
Yeah, acceptance, and or guidance, like you said,
Yeah.
right? There was guidance, but there wasn't guidance from a physical person that was in your
It's energetic,
surroundings.
right?
Yes,
When we seek truth, it will provide the answers to us when we submit ourselves to it and allow the suspension of our belief systems in the process.
yeah,
Critical
absolutely.
factor.
It is a critical factor. Um, I remember being in church, right? And I was 4 years old, and I was singing, like with the mic singing,
Cool.
and I remember, people were coming down, and I remember them, being in that place of surrender.
Mhm.
And then I, for the first time, started speaking in a light language or tongues, or there's
So
different.
this must have been Pentecostal.
Yeah. I was actually in a Southern Baptist church
Okay. All right. All right.
at the time. And I started, though, just speaking doing that, which I had never done before. That was the very first time. And then I also, in the interim, was saying, like I told a person that they were healed, and I knew that somebody was, I knew what they were praying for. And then I started telling them that they were the creator and that they were in this place and that they could, right now in this moment, if they could,
So were you aware of your intention in that moment, or were these things that it just happened because you were there? The reason I'm asking that is because the deep understanding, or it seems anyway, reflect on this if you would, that you were naturally in that place of being a conduit.
yes. Yeah. And it
Because
was,
you wanted to serve.
yes. So it wasn't necessarily anything that I didn't intend, there
You didn't
wasn't,
consciously make a choice.
I
It just
didn't
happened because
consciously
you
make
were
a
open
choice.
to it.
Yes. Although I do know that I did make the conscious choice to open my mouth and to say and
Oh
to
yeah,
allow,
yeah, yeah. Well,
right? So,
sure.
but not,
Yeah, because that
yes,
illustrates a great point. You still have choices to what to do with what your
yes,
inner impressions are offering.
yes. Um, and I got the microphone yanked right straight out of my hand. I got drugged by my arm up the aisle out to the, middle of
Treated
the,
like a
yeah.
child, seen, not
And
heard.
that's blasphemy. You can't do that. What are you doing? And then they were actually, and then a group of elders, right? They come out following, and then they're anointing me with oil, and they're basically kind of doing, trying to attempt to do like an,
They're trying to do an exorcism
yeah, they
and at the
were,
same time denying exactly what they profess to believe in. That's the bizarre thing about
yeah,
it. You know, you're
yeah.
denying the very thing you profess to be true.
So yes, and so in those instances throughout my life, though, really helped me begin to understand that there is a disconnect, a
Yeah, that things are pretty
discognizance.
fucked up, right?
Yeah, and but specifically between what it is that you say that you believe, what it is that you want, and what is actually happening,
Right.
and the separation between the two. And partly I've spent a lifetime learning how to gap that bridge, and build a bridge and gap that, and also say it to people, that I know what you want, I know what your heart is, I know what you're wanting to believe, I know what you're confessing to
Well,
believe, but
it's
what
all
you're,
built around love and being loved.
yes,
As I said before, right? This is the core of things.
it is absolutely the core. And to get there, right, when you've
Mhm.
had that dissonance, to get there, you get there with curiosity and compassion. Um, yeah, for yourself.
Compassion is key. You know, even Schwab in his book COVID-19 had two questions that I thought were really pertinent, one on personal level, one on a business level. The personal level is, can we be caring and compassionate coming out toward each other, coming out of COVID?
Yeah,
Because we hadn't been going in. The second one on business was, can the business be agile enough
yeah,
to adapt to a new marketplace?
yeah. Which is where I'm at now and what I am doing now, right?
Sure.
Partly
Open
is
up a whole new, I mean,
yeah,
World Futures Forum had the 2030 list of potential jobs, right? One of them is avatar management.
yeah,
You know, you know,
yeah,
we didn't even think about that 10 years ago.
right.
And now it has a whole new meaning with all the AI stuff. I had this really wonderful, I've been playing around with the program and creating my own personal avatar. I had
Uh,
myself recorded and you know, it's much easier to get yourself to say what you want to say rather than having to go through 20, 30 takes on camera,
yeah,
right?
right.
Is it acceptable though, with this new kind of technology of presenting yourself in a different image and navigating the intonation of the AI voice, even though it may be yours, there's still the intonation that hasn't quite gotten there yet. And the lip sync isn't quite on. It's not mini
Yeah.
vanilla yet, right?
Right. It's not yet, but it will be. And I think that ultimately, because we are so enthralled with development and
Great
being,
word.
at our best and highest, and our productivity, right? So one thing is to realize that that need for productivity came in with the industrialization, right? And
Hmm.
industrialization, even though we still see remnants of it, that's over. Then we went into the age of information, which we still are in, but at the same time, that's kind of yesterday's news
Yeah,
too,
it's at the end
right?
of the product
Yes,
curve.
we're at the end of that. And with AI, we lighten the cognitive load, right? So we
Mhm.
open our ability to not put so much pressure on the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala, the different parts of our brain. And when we can allow ourselves to do that, I truly believe that it allows us to have the energy, literally, the brain energy, the electromagnetic energy, to truly step into something that we haven't really done in a long time. And
No.
that's true innovation,
And
true
shared space,
shared
time,
space,
and consciousness.
yes, imagination, into the quantum, right? It allows us to have quantum consciousness cognitively. We have the
Mhm.
ability to do that every one tenth of a second, even faster than that, right?
Oh, sure. Sure.
There's even this a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, that there was an experiment, and I wish I could remember the doctor's name, but for 1 second, right, they actually proved that you can send this energy into the future, and in it return, and they actually caught that, right.
Hmm.
And so it's truly fascinating. And on a business level, right, in 2017, when I started having all of those understandings and downloads, for lack of a better word, it
Hmm.
was all about leadership and about business, and where we're at now. And it's what brought me, to where I am now. And I call myself an iconoclastic visionary, um, because an iconoclastic means to shred apart what is sacred and put it back together again.
Sure.
Right? So we're kind of
Well, in
conscious.
the true sense of the spiritual quest, everything is sacred and
Yes,
nothing is sacred.
exactly.
And it has to be that way
Yeah,
in order for truth to emerge.
exactly. Um, so you're not really tearing down anything,
Mm-mm.
but you are. And you're not really building anything,
You're
but
just
you are.
eliminating what is not harmonious.
Yes. And I love the word harmony and harmonious. I use that rather than balance, right? Everybody, we're trying to find that balance, but it's really that harmony.
Well, and
Uh,
we see chaos as entropy. It really isn't. It's just full of patterns we don't recognize yet.
yes, that's it. I love chaos because you can stick your hand into that goo of chaos, and that's the goo of creation, right? So like the
Absolutely.
Tao talks about it being the place of 10,000 things.
Mhm.
It's that
Or
it
Abindo even says
yeah,
in order to find your center, you must stand in the midst of chaos.
yeah. It's so true.
So
Um,
all of these things are there, and yet we're deathly afraid
right.
of that unknown, and we run from it. We kill for it
Yeah.
or
Yes.
because of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Taking another life form in any regard is not consistent with harmony.
No. No. Um, which is why personally you know I talk about that all the time. Anything that's outside of harmony is because of an illness, a sickness, or a dis-ease in your physical body, in the bodies of this realm,
You're
because
thinking.
Yes, your stinking thinking, because it is outside of harmony. And when we're in harmony, we do not do those actions, right? And part of us being able to return to that place of compassion is understanding that. And it's being able to still treat somebody that's in a far out place of disharmony with love, with compassion, with understanding, with acceptance, right? I
Mhm.
wrote this poem many years ago, but it talks about the different, types of love, right? There are many types of love. And sometimes it does feel like and look like an overprotective mother that has her thumb down on you, but
Mhm.
it's because her first child was stillborn. Sometimes it smells like a father that smells like alcohol and failure, right?
And these are
It's,
conditional things that we
there's
learn and experience, and yet there is the one,
there it is.
that sense of unconditional,
Love.
we call it love, and yet it's
God.
a sense of awe,
It is.
it
Mhm.
of just completely surrendering in this looking at or viewing this amazing creation in all its magnificent form and not understanding any of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, speaking of understanding, we've had, wow, what an apocalyptic chat we have had today, JenLyn. This has been just amazing. I love it. And thank you. As we're closing, we have the opportunity to share a poignant, tasty tidbit of advice for daily living consumption, if you will.
Yeah.
What could you offer to others that would be a wonderful gift for their daily experience?
Live with curiosity. Live with curiosity and embrace your muchness, as I call it, right?
We
In
got a lot of muchness.
We do have a lot of muchness. You are multifaceted. You are multidimensional. You are powerful beyond measure. Be curious. Start with your thoughts, right? What are they? Where are they? Can you feel them? Do you smell them? Can you see them? Do they have a color? Allow those questions to pour out from you and allow the answers to come back, right? Allow the colors to come back, allow the sound to come back, and understand that anything that comes forward is simply asking for your love and your acceptance. It's asking to be seen, it's asking to be heard. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's you, if it's your neighbor, if it's possible, if it's not possible, it's there. So be with yourself.
Cool.
Yeah, just don't be afraid. And if you are afraid, breathe, breathe, and breathe, and breathe. And that fear is going to move away. And what's going to come in its place is something that's extraordinary. And not only extraordinary, but extraordinarily you.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here, being you, and offering the apocalyptic notions that we have today.
Thank you so much.
And namaste and in-law catch. And thank you for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and thanks to our guest, JenLyn, today. We'll see you next time.